Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here today for this webinar, Optimising Your Dynamics 365 Data to Achieve Reduced Operating Costs. So without further ado, we'll just do some quick introductions.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Watkins. I'm Managing Director at Intercloud9. My background is in membership. I used to work in a membership organisation, software development company, and geotechnical.
Thanks, Chris. My name's Jen Watkins, and I'm the Professional Services Director at Intercloud9, working directly with clients on a range of topics from strategy through to technology, partner selection and tech onboarding services. So again, great to have so many of you here this morning, and let's get into it. Okay, so you might be wondering then what we're talking about today. Well, you know, one hopes that you have an interest in the topic, having joined us here today. So Chris, just talk us through briefly what we're going to be covering in the session.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about dynamics and how dynamics costs can grow over time, what you can do to address this issue. So we've got some top tips and advice that we would give to our clients and people that we speak to, and to introduce our Intercloud9 365 data optimizer solution and how that can help you with these growing costs.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, so some of you will have come across Intercloud9 and the work that we do in the consultancy space. So you might be wondering, well, why are we here today talking to you about software? So Chris, just give us a bit of an overview, a bit of an insight into Intercloud's technology services.
Well, we provide both consultative and technical services to support our partners and our clients together. So we have, in this case, identified a little bit of white space that we're trying to fill to support our clients getting the most out of their systems where partners have assisted them, and to maximize the return on investment that they get from using the platforms that we may recommend or encourage them to be using.
Great, thank you. So why Dynamics then? There are lots of CRM products out there in the market. We've got platform with Dynamics and Salesforce and open source as well as proprietary platforms. So Chris, why have you decided to talk about Dynamics in particular?
Dynamics is an incredibly popular platform. We've taken these statistics from the MemberWise Digital Excellence Report 2024. So 28% of organizations are using Dynamics, and that increases for larger organizations up to 38%. We only see that adoption rate increasing over time, and Dynamics is a great platform. Microsoft spends $32.4 billion in R&D they spent in 2024, and approximately $5 billion of that has gone towards Dynamics itself. It's an excellent platform as a service, scalable and extensible. Microsoft also have spend over $1 billion a year on security, data protection and risk management elements of the platform and their services. And we're talking about Dynamics because we've seen this bit of white space, and that's from reported challenges and some ones that we've seen in practice, which revolve around cost control for Dynamics. And in a particular point around this is that Dynamics is billed annually in advance for what they call data overage in the platform that has occurred over the previous year. So these costs are kind of designed to come in after you've started using them, but we'll get a bit more into that in a later slide.
Great, thanks, Chris. So it sounds like what you're saying is that we recognise that Dynamics is a popular platform of choice across the membership sector, that we see that growth continuing over the coming years, not least of which because of the investment and development that's going into artificial intelligence within the platform. So we see Dynamics uptake growing, But alongside that, we see this problem statement that you're going to talk us through now also developing alongside that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So this is a typical conversation that we hear, and you might have experienced this similar conversation in your organization as well. So let's see if this has any synergy with those discussions. What we've noticed is, out of the top of this is, well, our D365 bill is going to increase this year. Oh, okay. Slight look of puzzlement. Why? What's that about? Well, that's because of the amount of data that we've got in D365. Oh, okay. And why all this data? Why do we need all this data? Well, we need the data. We want to keep it, and that's how much it costs. And in fact, the sort of corollary to this is that because of the way the billing model works, as I mentioned previously, we've actually been we've used our data overage already for this year that we've been active. So we're kind of feeling a bit obliged to pay for it to cover it for next year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in summary, what you're saying is that you can be overusing the platform, maybe without even necessarily realizing that that's the case, and that those costs are then billed to you in the following year for data overage that you've already consumed in the previous year. So that sounds like that could be quite disconcerting for customers that may not have budgeted for those additional costs.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, so let's pause there and just run a quick poll then. Be interesting to hear from you guys as to whether you know how much data you have in the platform. So if you would just take a moment to pop your answers to the poll across to us. So do you know how much data you have in the platform? Got 4 options there. Yeah, so it sounds like for the most part, those on the call do have a clear picture of the data that's held in the platform. So that's a really great start. But for some of you, that might be an approximation rather than a rough figure. And there's a small percentage that don't have any handle on how much data is in the platform. So I was saying, in summary, there is a good understanding of how much data is in the platform. I wonder the extent to which that's connected with understanding the cost of consumption. Okay, so Chris, perhaps you could break down for us then in a bit more detail how the D365 cost model works. I think certainly as a non-technical person, I've found this quite difficult to wrap my head around. So maybe that's just me. Talk us through it.
Okay, so the D365 cost model, like any good cost model from a large organization, is designed to increase revenues over time. So I guess that underpins the idea that we've sort of gleaned from digging into this. And it's made up of 4 areas. So the licenses that you pay for each user, and then what's called data overage, which is broken down into 3 categories, but to all intents and purposes, I suppose you could call it 2 categories: data and user licenses. Essentially, the capacity, the amount of data that you can have in your dynamic system for nothing, or that's included in the cost of your user licenses, is whatever allowance there is for the tenant itself that Dynamics sits in, plus each user brings along a little bit of extra capacity for these 3 categories, and that composes your data allowance, is what we're calling it. Since the billing is done retrospectively in advance for the next year, so you're saying we've used some data already and we need to now pay to cover that for the next year, that constitutes the renewal cost, and being already over makes that puts the billing into a situation where you're looking to where you would excuse me, the last year's overage constitutes the renewal cost, and if you're already over capacity, there's an obligation to pay that. There's also the different environments that are set up inside one tenant. They contribute to using up this capacity, which compounds this problem of overage.
I see. So you mean test environments, live environments, dev environments, etc., all carry additional consumption?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's run another quick poll then. We're interested to hear from you as to what experience you have of modeling and predicting the annual costs of your Dynamics platform based on those various different billing areas. So if you can take a moment to pop your responses across to us. Yeah, so that's interesting. So 36% do have a way of predicting those costs, and 27% don't, 36% unsure. So it sounds like there is the potential there amongst the knows and the not sures to be getting hit by bills that have uncertain amounts associated with them, and therefore perhaps might not be budgeted, and in some cases may not even be affordable.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add into that very quickly, the usage that occurs for Dynamics only ever increases the amount of data that's stored in it. So the trajectory for the quantity of data is only ever going to increase over time.
Of course, makes perfect sense. Yeah, you add more data, create more records. I mean, I'm sure many of you hope to grow your membership over the coming months and years, and grow the number of audiences that you're engaging with. So naturally, alongside that goes increase in data, unless you've got specific things that you're doing to remove that data from the platform.
Exactly. And that brings us neatly onto the next point.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like customers are increasing their use of Dynamics over time, which one would expect and hope as organizations grow, and that has the potential to increase the consumption costs of the platform. So what can customers do to help themselves then in that scenario?
Great question. There are some things that we recommend Dynamics customers do to help with this kind of issue. I think the most powerful one is point one. So to use SharePoint for the file element of the storage. This effectively offloads all of, or it has the potential to offload all file storage into SharePoint, which has a much larger capacity per user. And that typically fixes that element of overage, although the other two still remain.
Okay, so just to be really clear then, this is about, rather than using the native file storage service within Dynamics, moving files out into a SharePoint environment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Auditing?
Auditing, so turning off auditing is an option that you can use. That would effectively stop the log storage element growing, and log storage has a relatively small capacity compared to the other categories.
So can you just explain a bit about what a customer might lose if they were to turn that feature off?
If they were to turn that feature off, they would lose the field level detail of who changed what over time.
I see. Okay, so things like address updates, you wouldn't be able to track who applied that change and when?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So perhaps a less aggressive version of that is number 3, to delete audit data. So you could attempt to stay under your allowance to avoid an overage charge. That's a little bit fiddly to do. It's more of a power user task, and we don't often recommend that unless there's some reasonably strong in-house skills to maintain that.
I see.
And finally, deleting the database data. So the database data is the main data that you would see in Dynamics, and it's possible to do that, although if your organization is keen to hold on to all of its data, and I'm air quoting there, then it may not be practical. There are some approaches that you can use to do that semi-automatically, but it can be complex to manage.
Okay, and it sounds like perhaps what customers would lose then is the integrity and history of reporting, for example.
Yeah, yes, obviously, if you delete something, it's gone, completely gone. So yes, that would be an issue.
Okay, so we've got this problem statement. Dynamics costs are growing exponentially over time as data and usage increases. And customers want to continue to use Dynamics. It's a great platform. So how do we balance that increasing cost with the desire to continue to grow use of the platform? And that's where Data Optimizer comes in. So talk us through then the key features of the Data Optimizer platform.
The Data Optimizer uses data policies to define and automate the movement of data. That data stays within the client's Microsoft tenant. So we tick the data residency box, and we do that more cost effectively than it would be to store that data directly in Dynamics. Alongside that, the data is made available using views in Dynamics with the right permissions applied so that users can still see or not the things that they need to. And
when you say or not, you mean in terms of permissions?
Yeah, in terms of permissions, yes. And we in doing this, we're able to reduce the total cost of ownership for Dynamics by adding this solution in. So essentially what I'm trying to say is it's cheaper to have this solution in and keep all the data and still be able to see it and hold on to it in your tenant and have it move around automatically than it would be to just store all the data in Dynamics.
Okay, so from my simple non-technical perspective, I think what you're saying is that customers can decide what data they want to keep in, let's call it core Dynamics, and for how long.
Yes.
And then data that falls outside of those parameters can be moved into the Optimizer tool, but it stays within the customer's Microsoft tenant.
Yeah.
It's not moved out into a separate environment. Users can still see that data and interact with it through views.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that is that the consumption costs are significantly reduced.
That's it.
Okay. So, as one would expect with any platform extension, there is a cost associated with using the Optimizer tool. Talk us through why customers might want to consider investing in the D365 Data Optimizer.
Well, primarily because they want to keep using Dynamics and manage this this TCO problem, this cost increase. So that our solution primarily addresses that, with being able to still have access to all of the data, still having the permissions applied. There's an extra element of automation that's added in using the policies defining what entities move when and how much, and to retain control of the data. So the data residency part of this solution is quite unique, that we're making sure that each client still has full overarching ownership of their data. And as we deploy through AppSource, Microsoft go through quite a rigorous process of verifying the solution and making sure that there's no that it meets their performance metrics and security metrics, architectural metrics, etc.
Okay, so in summary, no reduction in security or performance, no reduction in accessibility of data, but with reduced total cost of ownership.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to run a poll then again at this point to ask you to think about if you could reduce your total cost of ownership for Dynamics by moving into the data optimizer, what would be your priority? Got the priority is about cutting costs, improving performance, reducing compliance, or freeing up space for innovation. If you could choose your most important consideration. Okay, so it looks like, as expected for the majority, the primary motivation would be about cutting costs, not unexpectedly, particularly given the ongoing challenges that many membership organisations are having around income generation and income growth, as well as those rising costs with recent budgetary changes that have been made and so forth. Closely followed by reducing compliance risks. And, of course, that might be different parameters for different organisations. What I might surmise from that is that organisations probably don't want to compromise on the data that is held within the platform. So deleting data, turning off data audit are not really desirable outcomes, because that loses data integrity. It loses the ability to make decisions based on historical data over time. It reduces auditability of updates. So that in itself introduces more compliance risk and complexity. So yeah, not surprising to see that compliance is a key factor here. And as I say, I'll surmise from that could be constraining many in their ability to reduce or limit the amount of data that's held in their platform.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got a few worked examples that I want to share with you all to try and describe the reduction in TCO that I've been talking about. So we've modelled out a couple of different scenarios here. I've got 3 different scenarios, and just as an introduction to each of them, we're assuming here that we're applying a 3-year data retention policy to Dynamics, and the rest of the data is moved into the data optimizer. The graphs are all the same, and the information you'll see on the left is pretty much all the same, just the numbers change a little bit. So on the graph, the blue line, the dark blue line, is the total cost of ownership for Dynamics. So this is, if you had this scenario on the left, the numbers on the left, this is what it would cost you to pay for the renewal each year for Dynamics.
Based on data by size, right?
Based on data by size, yeah. Based on the number of user licenses, the starting point for each of these categories of data, and the growth rates that we've specified here. The purple line is the cost of having Dynamics plus the data optimizer with the exact same data change over time. So that's the cost difference. And then the green line is the net saving. So essentially the percentage difference between having the data optimizer or not, and just storing all the data in Dynamics. So for this example, we can see we're starting off at year 1, or assuming the starting point, the cost would be 21% less. In year 5, that grows to 45% less, and in year 10, that would grow to 57%. Now, despite me going against the advice I was given to only model this out to 5 years, I think a 10-year timeline horizon is sensible for a platform such as Dynamics.
Yeah, and that we say that because typically we know that FTs and CIOs, CTOs tend to model out ROI over 5 years maximum. But as Chris says here, we've taken this out to the 10-year horizon because generally speaking, realistically, that is how long these platforms tend to stay in use in organizations. And also because, as you can see, the data growing over time, those cost savings grow alongside. Okay, let's have a look at the second scenario.
Great. So scenario 2, we've called this a 4 to 5 year old Dynamics with 80 users, a variety of numbers for how much data is in main database storage, the logs and file storage, excuse me, with the relative growth rates described here. And similar savings can be achieved. It's a slightly larger saving to start with, 32% growing year on year to 46% saving in the year 5 renewal, and then that would project out to a 57% saving in the 10th year. And
scenario 3,
not to bore you with what looks like exactly the same stuff again, this is a large organization, 330 user licenses with large data retention requirements, so much larger numbers, similar percentage savings. So year 1, 36%, year 5, 48%, and then that would grow to 59%, near enough 60% in year 10.
Okay, so I think the summary of that is that the larger the organization, the larger the savings are from year 1. We see those savings of just above 20% for the smallest of the examples that you brought through here, up to 36% in year 1 here for scenario 3, a large organization. And typically we're looking at up to 60% savings at year 10 across those 3 different examples.
Yep, they all project out to about 60% in the end.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, so talk us through then the summary then of what you've just described there.
Thanks. The 3 optimizations we mentioned in the previous slides are there really to express the art of the possible and how we would advise our clients for quick win opportunities. They do unfortunately only have really limited scope depending on your organization's requirements, and there's often a high maintenance overhead for some of them. I think the SharePoint optimization is definitely one that we would drive you to consider, or very strongly suggest, because it's quite effective. The others are more for completeness than to suggest that there's something that you would be able to do there with any legs in it. In summary, for the data optimizer, just to round off with refreshing our minds on the points there, it's you're able to define data strategies, so policies that describe how and when data should be moved around. And again, that's, to be really clear, that's on a customer by customer basis. So what customer A does in the optimizer can be completely different to what customer B does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is a per install set of settings, if you want. The Dynamics user permissions are applied to the data when you're viewing the data back via the data optimizer into Dynamics. We have designed the system to be compliant in the control of data and to ensure that each client retains ownership, so data residency box is ticked. And we, based on our models, calculate up to 60% reduction in TCO in something like year 10, which is broken down into a cost to own the data optimizer of these figures, approximately $12.50 a month, plus £5 a month per user, plus some bandwidth charges. So which is because of the way that we move data around, and we use secure Microsoft backplane connections to do that. There are some charges involved with moving data around, but essentially what that means is the data doesn't ever see the internet. It stays within Microsoft.
And this is a security feature, right?
Yeah. It's to just make sure that we don't upset any clients by saying, oh, actually we do this across the internet.
Okay, so just to be really clear, it's a fixed fee of £12.50 a month, and then on top of that, customers pay £5 per user per month, and then approximately £100 a month in bandwidth fees.
Yeah, and it's a generous estimate, to be honest. So we would. It obviously depends on the amount of data, but
yeah, and I think you said that that's likely to be a maximum threshold of £100.
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point then, I'd like to just get some reaction from the audience on how satisfied you are with what your current recurring fees are for your Dynamics platform. So just a quick from very satisfied through to very dissatisfied. Yeah, share your thoughts on how you're feeling right now about your recurring costs. Okay, so we've got no one reporting that they're very satisfied. I guess that's not to be unexpected. We'd all like things to be cheaper in life. 9% satisfied, the majority neutral. So I guess that's about, what have you got to compare it with? The costs are the costs. You get billed what you get billed, and it's probably only a problem if it's becoming unaffordable. And then we've got 18% are dissatisfied and 9% are very dissatisfied. So it sounds like there's some scope and some room there for cost reduction. Okay, so shall we wrap up?
Yeah.
Next steps then. So if the data optimizer is something that you might be interested in for your organization, then how we would move that forward is we'd do a customer specific model for you in the way that Chris has shown across those 3 examples there. So we'd look at how much data you're currently storing in your platform, and we'd profile that data out. And then we can use that to predict what your cost savings will be so that you can determine whether this is the right product for you. If that's something that you would like to explore, there's an email address there, hello@intercloud9.co.uk, and our contact number. You can obviously contact us through the website as well and follow us for updates. Okay, we have got a little bit of time for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A, which is in the ribbon at the top of the Teams call. You can pop them in the chat as well if you wish. We'll keep an eye on both. Give you a couple of minutes just to think of any questions that you might have. If you don't have any questions, feel free to drop off so we know that you've heard all that you need to hear this morning. And thank you for joining us. We hope that you found the webinar of interest, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Yep. Thanks very much, everyone.
Have a great day.
There it is.
Hi, so Ayman, we've got a question on, you mentioned keeping the data in the tenancy. Doesn't the data already exist in the tenancy? Chris, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. What we mean by that is that we move the data out of Dynamics into the optimizer. And when the data stops moving, it remains inside your client tenant. So yes, it already exists in the tenancy. What we're saying is that the actual location goes from Dynamics to Data Optimizer side. And those two things exist in your tenant. So when we set up the optimizer, we create a storage container for that data to go into, and you own it. It belongs to your IT infrastructure in Azure. Does that have I missed the point? Is that getting to the nub of the question?
You can give us a thumbs up or another question if you've got a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that question. Are there any others?
Sounds like maybe there aren't any more questions.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for joining us and for those that have stayed to the bitter end, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Hold on.
How do you remove the optimizer? So question, how do you remove the optimizer and move the data back into D365 should that become necessary? Chris, do you want to take that?
Yes, sure. So I think that this would typically not be a use case we would encourage users to do because of the cost saving that's introduced by using the optimizer in the first place. If you did want to do that, then yes, though it is possible for the data to be put back.
Can you just perhaps give us a very brief technical understanding of how that happens?
Well, we would do that. We would do that manually to put the data back if that's what was necessary. It's not something that's automated in the process.
I see. Okay, so you can't do that from within the optimizer, but that's a service that we would provide for offboarding purposes.
Yes.
I see. Andy, I hope that answers your question. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. So we'll draw to a close there then. Thanks for your time, everyone, and hope to see you again here soon.